It's 10. Hello, good morning. From gangs to God. The biggest police force in England and Wales, the Met, wants churches to help it tackle knife crime. They want them to be safe spaces for young people, places where they can go and talk to someone. Well, this programme's been given exclusive access to a church where more than half the congregation are former gang members. Our reporter Noel Phillips has been to see how it's helping people. We brought you his full film earlier. Here's a short extract before we have a conversation about this.
We're in South London inside SPACNATION Ministries, a church where religion is being used to reform ex-gang members, like 26-year-old Kevin, who was recently in prison for attempted murder.
Last year and this year is it's actually the first time that I haven't been into prison, so do you get what I'm saying to you? So it's something that's working.
These were once some of Britain's toughest gangsters, but now they've swapped the streets for the church.
We've had times where people are coming to the altar and dropping their drugs on the altar. We're coming where people are dropping their knives on the altar. I mean, last week, a young boy that came out of jail, I was praying for him, I was holding him, and he was crying.
Just 2 years ago, Connor, who is now a pastor, was facing a 10-year sentence for a string of violent crimes.
I went to jail for some robberies, possession of a bladed article. I was charged with money laundering of £30,000. I feel like if I had come to SPAC before I was involved in that kind of stuff, I would have been shown the right mentorship and guidance to not have to do those kind of things.
A far cry from his past life. This 22-year-old joined a gang when he was just 12.
Do you remember the first time you carried a knife?
I do, yes. Age 13. I took it to school, but although I didn't do nothing with it, it was there for protection. It's like reckless abandonment. You don't care about what can happen. You don't care about the consequences. You live in the minute. So you get the knife, you put it in your pocket. You don't think about, oh, there's police down the road, or what if I get into a problem and I actually have to use this.
Pastor Toby Adeboyega is the man responsible for transforming their lives.
Over 55% of the people in the church were ex-gang members, drug dealers. The police and the authorities don't really know what to do right now. They look to me like they are confused. And so call it a church, call it whatever we want to call it, it has to be the role of somebody.
But people on social media have accused a 37-year-old pastor of running a cult-like ministry, something which he denies. At his home, Pastor Toby has 14 ex-offenders living with him from his church.
They need shelter. That's not shelter from ex-gang people chasing them. The mind is the factory for everything. And I've got to do that. Again, I stumbled into this. It's not a plan. It's not something we sat down and said, look, we're going to have, but I'll deal with cases and ask myself, where do I want him to go?
The Metropolitan Police has welcomed Pastor Toby's approach and say they want more churches like this to help reduce knife crime.
Let's meet two other men who SPACNATION has also helped. Enrique Uwadiai, who is a former gang member from Brixton in South London. He has been stabbed 3 times, and he is on 3 separate occasions, and he's now SPACNATION's youngest pastor. Samuel Akokia joined a gang at the age of 12. He's been involved in stabbings, and he served 4 years in prison for robbery. He is now a mentor, businessman and pastor. Also with us, the Labour MP Sarah Jones. She's head of the all-party parliamentary group on knife crime and has also visited SPACNATION, which is in her constituency. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Enrique, former gang member. You've been arrested, correct me if I'm wrong, for attempted murder, violent disorder, criminal damage, carrying a knife. You've been involved in many dangerous activities. Stabbed on 3 separate occasions, and I think we can show a picture to our audience of you in a hospital bed right now. Hopefully there. You nearly died on that occasion.
Yes, I did.
What was motivating you to pursue such a violent life of crime?
I'll say it was poverty at first.
So it was about getting money?
It was, at first it started about, getting money, not having enough. Then it's what pushed me to wanting to get more. And
of course, at that age, you don't really think of getting a job per se. You think that, you know, getting a job is not going to provide for your needs, so to speak. So that kind of drove me and my friends to, you know, commit certain crimes in order to get money. Right. So that's how I actually started at the age of 14.
Okay. And you, alongside that, you were producing various rap videos.
That's correct.
Encouraging people to join gangs for the same purpose, because you didn't need to get a job. Actually, you could get more money if you, you know, robbed this institution or this home.
The music videos wasn't really to encourage people to live the life I was living. I think I was just doing music because it was my passion.
Okay.
So I used to make music from when I was young.
Once you're in a gang, how difficult is it to get out of one? You joined one at age 12.
Yeah. Well, it can be quite difficult to get out of a gang because it starts off as a group of friends. It's not necessarily people who decided, okay, we're going to form a gang. It's people who have grown up together, lived together, sort of eaten together most of their life for certain years of their life. So it can be difficult when you decide to turn around and say to your friends that, well, I don't want to live this life anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
How would you describe your teenage years?
My teenage years were very, very violent. Very violent. It started off with just pure violence at the beginning, but then evolved into crime as well. We started having a hunger for money and for things to do with what we perceived as success at the time, you know, which is having a lot of money, having a lot of girls, having a lot of things that were glorified in our inner circles, you know. Then by the age of, I would say 17, I started getting involved in major robberies and things like that that would be sort of things that I would never expect myself to be involved in, you know. And then by 18, I was in prison, you know. And then that was, by the time I would come out of prison, I was no longer a teenager. I was what we would call a young adult.
Yeah. And it was, I think, a few days after you left prison, 4 days after that, you got introduced to Pastor Toby.
Yes.
Now, how were you found, if I can put it like that? Go on, sorry.
So with Pastor Toby, I actually came to SPACNATION in 2016. I was invited by one of the church members.
Right. So pause there, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So you're in a gang, you've done the violent stuff. Okay, you've just come out of prison, so you might be thinking, I don't necessarily want to go straight back into prison, so whatever. A pastor comes up to you, a self-appointed pastor comes up to you, or a member of a church comes up to you and says, come to our church. I mean, you're just not going to go, are you? It can't be as simple as that.
You will go if you see an alternative. One thing I've noticed as a young man is that though I was a gang member, like I said earlier on, I was looking for money. I was looking for relevance. I was looking for love. There's certain things I was looking for. And if someone would come to me and offer me that lifestyle without me having to get involved in crime and having to risk my own life, I would go for it. So that option, that alternative was provided for me, which is what caused the change.
I.e. someone saying, actually, you can get a decent job and you can still, I don't know, still have a Gucci watch or a designer pair of trainers?
I don't think it's necessarily that simple because...
that's what I'm trying to get to.
People are looking for something. People are looking for something, and if I just use my own story as an example, when I came out of prison, I had plans to go back to drug dealing.
Did you?
Yes, I had made those plans in prison, but an interaction with Pastor Toby changed my perception on life completely.
What did he say to you?
So the interaction was just, first of all, it started with care. He just said, what's up? You know, I'd never been treated with such respect because the kind of society that we come from is almost like you do not have, you do not have an opinion. You're just somebody who is supposed to go through life. But he treated me with respect, asked me, what's up? What do you intend to do now, you know? And then apart from that, then he showed me his lifestyle. For example, I've lived in his house. I saw the way he lived, and that inspired me. Because from wanting to go back and do drugs, to living in his house, being inspired, and now 7 years down the line, I'm a businessman, a mentor in Croydon community, through a community unit, which is there's 17 others around London, and also an entrepreneur in many different ways, plus being a pastor. This is a life that I would have never dreamed of. But because I saw one man who is the leader of SPACNATION, I now am able to say, this is the life I also want to live, impact other lives. You know, and so what you would then say is that I think people then see an alternative. They see people who are passionate about something, and that passion is what they also have been looking to do or be passionate about, so they join the train.
Okay. What do you think, Sarah Jones?
I think it's amazing. I think what these men are doing is they're stepping up and they're saying, you know, we know what happened to us, we've got that lived experience, which means that you can relate to other people in the same position, and they're stepping up and saying, we care, we want everyone to have the same opportunities we've now got. And you know, for me as an MP, I want to learn from that, and I want us to go as politicians. We all need to step up as well, because we're at a bit of a crossroads with this knife crime stuff. I mean, it's gone up massively over the last few years, and we can either let it carry on going up and up and up and up and up and give up on a whole generation of young people who are desensitised to violence, or we can say, well, we all need to do something, and they're stepping up, so we should step up too. And it's, you know, I think we need to work together. There's nothing more effective, I think, than young people who've been through an experience to be able to then... I've met so many young people who've kind of are coming out of what they've been through because they've got mentors, they've seen people who've given them a choice and have given them, like, another alternative to getting involved in crime. You were involved at 12. Like, how do you know what you're doing at 12 years old? You know, those choices that you make there, it's not your, you know, that's not your fault you got into that situation, and you need someone to get you out. So I think it's great.
You say that about half your congregation used to be in a gang. How do you know they're not carrying out criminal activities without, you know, right now?
And the reason why we do is because, again, you know, church is usually idolized as an institution, but what we have is a very close family bond.
Yes.
We almost sort of live each day with each other. Of course, we go to work, we do what we need to do, but then we all have meeting groups, friends. So why we're confident is because each person has friends in which they can connect with and sort of live life with.
So you're saying you just would know because you're so close to everybody?
Yes. Well, we would know most. We can't vouch for every member, and that's the truth. But what we can know about those who truly do go to SPACNATION, we know that they are seeing something better, and they're willing to leave that life behind totally.
Okay. Lucy tweets this. Huge admiration for these young men on your programme today discussing gangs and violence. Tess says this on Twitter: it's so good that more young people in London are finding a purpose for life. It breaks my heart to see youths lost to gangs. Lee says this is great work and I love it. Now you are the youngest ordained pastor and in SPACNATION and currently a second-year undergraduate studying
international business.
International business management.
Yes. How
do you reflect on the completely opposite contrast in your life from how it was to now?
I tend to live my life very open. So I used to, like I said, I used to make music, so I was very well known. So people can clearly see the sort of lifestyle I used to live and who I am now. One thing that I always tell young people is that, and I just literally let them know that, you see, if I could be a gang member, being stabbed at the age of 17, nearly dying, you know, and stuff like that, but now I'm not just the youngest pastor in SPACNATION, but also the leader of one of the community units in SPACNATION. I just say to them that, you see, if it's possible for me, it's possible for you. Yes. If mentorship is applied, if mentorship is provided, which is what Pastor Toby has been doing for myself, Pastor Sam, and many of other young men and women in SPACNATION.
And because you live that life, you have credibility when you meet other people who are currently in a gang.
In that lifestyle, exactly that. They are able to relate with me. So it's not that it comes from a distant person. You know, they can clearly go on YouTube and see the life that I used to live, and they can clearly see who I am now. You know, and that inspires them, that motivates them, that gives them hope to, you know, be able to live a different life. You know.
Yeah. For me personally as well, it's about being able to show them results.
That's right.
Show them life stories, not just our own, but we have many that we've seen from the feature, Kevin, who was in prison just maybe a couple of years ago for attempted murder, comes out, now an entrepreneur, a director, hasn't been back to prison, hasn't been involved in any dealings with the police since he's been introduced to entrepreneurship. So, I mean, using that as examples for young people as well helps us. Not just Kevin, but there are many young men who have come from Croydon, now have offices in Mayfair, you know, so there's a lot of things that we can now point to as practical results of young people who have changed their lives.
I want to put this to all of you briefly and finally. Helen, wonderful to see young people choosing to change their lives. Appalling, though, that this is being led by a religious organisation. How can a sophisticated Western country rely on a religious organisation to offer alternatives to a life of crime? What would you say to that?
Absolutely. So, you know, these guys have just explained how they got into this situation, poverty. You know, imagine if we as politicians and we as wider society took responsibility for poverty, did something about it.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Sorry. It wasn't, if I have understood you correctly, it wasn't necessarily about poverty per se. It was about wanting to get more money and not necessarily doing it via conventional routes. Is that fair?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say so. I would say it was poverty and, you know, just not being able to have the opportunities at the time to, you know, get finances in a more legal way.
Fair enough. Sorry, Sarah, carry on.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, things like education, loads of kids now increasingly being expelled from school. When you're excluded from school, you can easily go down a path. Now, these guys are picking up on some of them, but it's government's responsibility, it's the school's responsibility, it's, you know, it's the hospital's responsibility. You know, we could fund youth workers in all our A&Es so that if you come in and you've been stabbed, there's someone there when you come round to say, hang on a minute, to do exactly what you're doing, say, hang on, let's see if we can change your life. So we all need to step up to the plate, I think.
OK. Thank you very much.
OK.
No, go on.
OK, so I was going to say that I disagree with the fact that it shouldn't be led by a religious institution. Reason being is because most of the young people that you see, I give myself an example, we grew up in church. We grew up in church and we left the church because we were looking for an alternative lifestyle. So I think the church has to be a part of the solution to provide alternative lifestyle for these young people.
OK. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Samuel Akokia, Enrique Uwadiai and Sarah Jones. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.